founder of the Vested Group, a technology services provider for all things NetSuite, and I'm happy today to be able to introduce our speaker, Marshall Martin of Petra Coach. To give you a little background, we as an organization have used coaching, external coaching for many years, and have really seen the impact that it has had on our business. One of the things that we really value is Rockefeller habits, and I'm going to let Marshall talk a little bit about that, but we know we can't do it on our own. We have to have somebody help us through accountability, and really making sure that we're following the steps on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly process. And Marshall is that guy for us. He has led us through ups and downs, through the current crisis, through years that were excellent and years that weren't. He always brings a lot of energy. He definitely brings accountability, real talk, and he's always available for anything that we need. And without further ado, here is Mr. Marshall Martin.
All right. Thank you, Joel. Well, good afternoon to everyone, or I guess, well, soon to be afternoon, unless you're East Coast. I'm Marshall Martin, again, as Joel said, with Petra Coach. Got to Petra Coach just briefly after 3 decades running companies, and found my love of working with multiple companies at once through the Rockefeller habits. So again, a little bit today, we'll talk about the Rockefeller habits, but what I really wanted to focus on today is how to move your business from defense to offense in times of disruption. As we all know that the year started off very well. Everyone had plans, and then in and about early March, those plans have been disrupted a bit. And I'm going to walk you through some stages of business that we all, either on a personal or business level, went through, some just being human response, all the way through to getting you to the offense stage. So it's my desire today to be able to outline those 4 stages: defense, stability, reset, and offense, but to get your brain wrapped around how that you can get to that offense stage so that as the economy comes back online, you're positioned well and your teams are positioned well, and you have a plan and you can be accountable to that plan so that you can recover and be on track for the back half of this year. So with that being said, I'll start the presentation. So, we talk about a coach. What is a coach? Well, perfect audience today, because I happen to be a big Dallas Cowboys fan. So for all of you who are Dallas Cowboys fans, what is a coach? A coach is someone who tells you what you don't want to hear, who has you see what you don't want to see so you can become what you always knew you could be. And that, in my opinion, from the great Tom Landry, and Tom Landry has always been someone that I admired as a leader because he was part strategist, having developed really one of the most popular defenses in the NFL, but he was also a good leader, very stoic, kept the emotions in check. So that's what I think a leader and a coach is. Briefly about me as well, during those 3 decades in business, I also have spent over 3 decades in Ironman triathlon. The only reason that I show this is a little bit about me, but also to say that the crisis situation we're in today is really an endurance event. And I feel like that I've prepared my entire life to be able to endure this. And now it's fun to be give back to others in a way to help them build their business endurance. So today, everyone, turn your videos on. I'm actually looking at a different screen, but for those of you in the audience, keep the videos on. It's interactive. Joel, if you'd be so kind to, if questions come up, certainly interrupt me. This is a very informal presentation, and I want to be able to help answer some questions. But specifically, I want you to look for ways that you can improve and take action. And upon the back end of this webinar, I will have my contact information in here because this is what we do. We help and coach others so that they can have plans for their business so that you can go get what you want on a personal and professional level and make sure you're achieving your why in your business. Not your what, but your why. And I'll speak more to that as well. So, and we talked about defense, stability, reset, offense. We'll remove the impossible. We'll make it possible. There are tools that I'll go over today. This presentation is probably going to run along roughly 30 minutes. And then I will go over a high-level view of some tools that we use. Now, we won't be using those tools to do work today, but we're able to take and we'll send you those tools. And then we'll also be prepared to help you should you want to engage for us helping you carry out building out your strategic plans or your tactical execution plan. So again, I'll give you my information at the end. So before we can determine where we're going to go and think now moving towards offense, we have to understand, what does the battlefield look like today? We went through a period, obviously, from mid-March up until, call it late April, when I believe that heavy fog, and we were clearing our way through the fog in a way that we could start to see what the backside starting to look like. And for those of you in Texas, Texas has had a fairly aggressive stance to opening back up the Texas economy, as is, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. So literally within a few days, our battlefields, if you will, are somewhat similar in the fact just because of the way the state governments have opened up their economies. So to assess where you are, we go back to very simple exercises. And before I get into talking about the very simple exercises, when Joel mentioned the Rockefeller habits happens to be the operating system in which we use at Petra Coach to guide businesses. And if you think about an operating system for the business, just like Windows is for a computer, where we work together through simple, practical, and actionable exercises. So it's nothing super fancy, but simple, practical, and actionable exercises that allow us to narrow down to the most important things that a company could go do. Once we do that, working with leadership teams, we drive those down into specific and measurable outcomes. Some people say we need more revenue. Well, we don't accept just we need more revenue. We may say we need an additional $2 million in sales bookings, and we need them in the following product lines, and we need them from the following contributors, and we need the timing of which to be a certain time period. And, oh, by the way, these are the core customers, or those people who see value in what we do. And so we get very specific about what the outcome is. And so we refer to it as being specific and measurable. And then the last leg is we drive information deep into the organization through effective communication rhythms. And all of this is to create a culture of purpose, why you do what you do, and accountability, doing what you say you'll do, in the areas of people, strategy, execution, and cash. So when we talk about assessing the playing field, we're attacking these with very simple exercises that allow you to drive down to get to the most important things. Many companies, and we work with companies from startup all the way to multi-billion-dollar companies, and we've done 2,500 planning sessions over the last 8 years. And so most of the time we get started into this, entrepreneurs have a mindset that there's so many things we could go do. However, we're not worried about what we could go do. We're more worried about what we should go do. So we start off by assessing the playing field with a SWOT analysis, our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And when we think about strengths, what are your capabilities, attributes, skills, and assets? But while we're working on identifying those strengths, we need to ask ourselves the following question. What is it about those strengths? A lot of people say people. We have to keep people intact. We have to make sure this payroll protection program keeps people on board. We know if we lose our people, we won't get them back. But what is it about those people that makes the strength the people? Is it their experience? Is it their commitment? Is it their culture fit? Is it expertise? Those kind of things. However, when you look at strengths, we ask ourselves the question, what do we need to do to protect those strengths? If it truly is the people, what are you going to do to keep those people? When we look at weaknesses, and if you look at the SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the SWOT is usually the easiest or most easily identifiable things in your SWOT analysis. And when we think about weaknesses, the question becomes, what do we need to do to remove a weakness? Now, these are internal, both strengths and weaknesses are internal to the organization, within your control, immediate and lesson, and how do we eliminate those? Weaknesses left unattended to, as I get to in a moment, could possibly turn into threats. So we want to remove those weaknesses, and we see the dynamics of the weaknesses column of the SWOT changing quite frequently. So what will we need to do to remove a weakness? Opportunities. Again, oftentimes we could think shiny objects, but opportunities we look at external to the business. What are those things we could go do that if we took advantage of these, we would wildly exceed our stated goals over the next 24 months. So we're going into a period as we move towards offense where opportunity is going to present themselves. For some of you who's sitting on a stockpile of cash, you may want to go acquire companies. For some of you who don't have the right people inside of your business, it's going to be time that you can go out and get some really good people and take advantage of the opportunity. In some cases, your business has been pushed to pivot, i.e. from a liquor distillery to turning hand sanitizer, or from going to delivering food to restaurants to going direct to consumer. So what are those opportunities? And again, we have to get through defense stability and that reset phase to get our brain opened up into the offense phase so we can think about those opportunities. And oftentimes, first one in wins. But we don't want to do it in a way that we distract the business and not focus on the core of the things that we must go do. And then threats. Think about threats in the following way. What are those things left unattended to that would cause business harm, major decline in revenue, possibly up to 50%, or left unattended to could make the business go away? So when we ask our question about the threat, what do we need to do to reduce the risk associated? And I always say with a known threat, because oftentimes perceived threats are different than known threats, and it causes us to be distracted in businesses in a way that we chase down every little bit of noise here and there and lose track of that critical path that we must follow to achieve our strategic direction. So I brought this up here, wartime leadership. There's peacetime leadership and wartime leadership. I was talking with one of our members last night. We call them members, not clients. And this particular person who usually operates in a peacetime leadership is specifically in wartime, meaning I want to gain consensus. It's important to gain consensus. However, it's time to make sure we're making the right decisions at the right time and taking action. It may lead you being unpopular and because you're telling it straight, but you have to stay out in front and move quickly. And again, consensus in our world usually is 80% consensus, means keep moving forward. I would tell you then during times of wartime leadership, it might be slightly less than that. Now, let's go through defense. I'll quickly move through defense and stability because I want to get us to reset and offense. So with this, this on the screen here is an adaptive crisis checklist specifically related to this crisis that we're in, both healthcare and economic crisis. In a way, it's a series of questions. Now, if you will reach out to me after this, I can send you a link to an ebook that has over 100 questions in the categories defense, stability, reset, and offense as a tool that can help you understand those things to be looking for as you bring your business back online or beyond where you previously were. When I say human response, kind of won the day in early March, when the economy shut down, our businesses shut down, we went into internal instinct mode first, health, safety, and well-being of ourselves, of our family, of our workforce, and of our business. And so all that stuff, somewhat maybe not completely natural within us in a way that we had to go into protection mode. But it also shut our brains down to really look into business as it normally existed or looking at the opportunities that was ahead. We transitioned our people to work from home. We had to be very direct. We had to increase our communication rhythms. For those companies that we work with, we implement, again, that third leg of the Rockefeller habits. We implement that communication rhythm that delivers that strategic plan, specific and measurable, deep into the organization through effective communication rhythms. And in many cases, I know for us, we had an 8:33 in the morning huddle. We had a 5 o'clock in the evening huddle every single day until things calmed a bit. And we also went into cash conservation mode, which I'll talk about a bit. We took advantage of government funding, as many of you have as well. We minimized layoffs, furloughs, and sometimes we had to reduce hours, but we focused on accelerated billings and reducing those receivables and went to find whatever money we could find to support. Again, a little bit of a repeat, but health and safety stood tall during this time. Now, in the defense mode, all of us were trained or we were reminded that we needed to obsess over cash. We needed to reduce costs where we could, but invest where needed. Now, the human response was stop all spending. Now, what we worked with our members to discuss is go look at what expenditures you could eliminate, but don't run and grab all the levers to shut down all expenditures when there are things that you would get value from that in fact would either keep the business as stable as possible or position you to keep the business moving forward. So here's some tips and tricks around cash management. If you're not doing this already, the CEO should get a daily report and summarize cash in and cash out. If you don't currently do a weekly, at a minimum, cash report, inflows, outflows, etc., I highly recommend that. You can do this in an Excel spreadsheet, and over a period of time, you can get pretty close to really being well in advance of what cash uses and cash inflows you're going to have. What I find is, and briefly, my background, as I've said it, the CEO, COO, and CFO seat inside of companies from startups to multi-billion-dollar companies. I like to informally close the books every week with a weekly flash report and not wait for it to perfectly end at the end of the month and then wait for my financials. I like to have a daily and weekly cash report so that I have my hands on the dials of seeing what the business should or could be doing so that there's no surprises. So kind of a pet peeve of mine is I do not like to be surprised. Oftentimes with cash management or performance of the business, we're surprised. So again, in the weekly report on AR, AP, and work in process of the value of the sales pipeline. What are we going to be bringing in? And then the team will focus on the cash levers. So what do we do with accounts receivable? Let's speed up and reduce those. What do we do with accounts payable? We slow those down, and I say slow those down. Those are most respectfully done when they're slowed down, when we have relationships where we ask if someone's willing to allow us to slow down those receivables. So we've got to improve our cash cycle from what I call cash to cash. And then our banks and insurance companies, how are we leaning on them in a way that helps us weather the storm? I won't go through the details of the checklist, but just a simple checklist about things that we can do. One of the tools we use is a cash conversion cycle, which basically says shorten the business cycle, eliminate mistakes, or in some cases, change your business model. And some may say, what do you mean change your business model? Think about Dell. When Dell moved to cash up front, they had a huge windfall, like a 70, I forget what the amount, 70 billion or $1 million worth of change in cash flow immediately. I worked as a CFO at Olin Mills Portrait Studios, for all of you who remember Olin Mills, and we always collected cash for portraits up front. And so get that cash in the door as soon as possible to make sure you're well funded for the business. Now, let's talk about the who. In the people, strategy, execution, and cash, the question we would ask around people when we're building our plans around people. Do you have the right people in the right seats? And ask the question, would you enthusiastically rehire every person? What would your answer be? When I ask this question in front of hundreds of rooms, either someone looks down at the ground knowing that they have someone that should no longer be on the team, and they have not provided the service of being a true leader and did what's right for the business. Now, before you think, I don't particularly like the red X's because I'm a big believer in taking good care of your people. But too often, especially during this crisis, we have seen people go into this crisis knowing that there were some players that were C players on their team, but they had not done the work to set them free. Now, before we talk about just, quote, firing someone, when I say set them free, your C player may be someone else's A player. And you need to be constantly talking about people and also talking about, do you have the right people? And as you come out of this crisis and start looking forward, you're going to have the right people with a seat on the bus to make sure the business is successful. So always be looking at the who is inside the business. Now let's go to stabilize. Communication. We talked about accelerate communication. We have to be clear with communication. We cannot read minds. Use one-on-ones to check in with the team. Now you see it says not just business. Not everyone is open with telling you what's on their mind. And let's be real here. There's a lot of people with a lot on their mind, and I can't see all of you, but I dare say that all of you have been impacted in some way through this crisis. Either your company, your employees, your family, someone you know, or somewhere within a couple of degrees of separation have been impacted. we need to be talking to our people to make sure they're in a good place, because we've been clouded, we've been overrun with, turn on the news, you just have to turn it right back off. But we need to make sure everyone's doing those well-being check-ins. Let's talk about how we stay grounded to our plans and manage our priorities. Now, Joel and his team use this tool, and it's really traffic lighting and dashboards as we work together to focus on what are those annual targets for the company. Then ultimately what becomes those 4 to 6 annual key initiatives that we must go accomplish. Then we work together quarter over quarter to narrow those down to what are those top 3 to 5 company priorities that we need to go work on. And then how do we fit those into those meeting rhythms in a way that we have daily huddles, weekly huddles, monthly meetings, quarterly planning meetings. But we're always grounded to seeing the dashboard inside of this tool to make sure we're staying on track to what we need to be doing. So when we get distracted, we can come back. I refer to this as top dead center. This is an interesting graph. This is not the stock market. This is actually emotional response to negative change. We know people don't like change. Well, if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance even less. So if we can't change, we're going to have to look at, let me say it a different way. We have people wishing that they could get back to normal. And I'll be to tell you that I don't think things are going to come back to normal. I don't know what this thing means called new normal. What you're in control of is your next normal. And that's what we need to work on to make sure that you're planning to be in control as much as you can of your next normal as we all figure out what the new normal will look like. So in communication rhythms, we talked about moving people offline, bringing them on a technology platform, Zoom. I saw where, you have Microsoft Teams. Google has come out with new video conferencing. Everyone is going to this video conferencing because some companies, even if the economy opens back up in their state, are not going to send people back in to the offices altogether at the risk of an outbreak. And, we could discuss either side of that about how that works. But here's some communication, video, use a tool like Align to make sure you're capturing that information, or Slack or whatever you want to use. Have an order set in which you go around the room, call everyone by name. Again, having it on video allows you to look into their eyes, and you can use emotional intelligence to understand, are they doing okay? In our world during these times, we led with an update, especially back in those mid to late March days with a COVID-19 update. What do we know? What are we finding out? And then we just go through personal highs and lows, business highs and lows. What are those things that the rest of the organization needs to know, and how do we keep information flowing freely? I don't know about you, but in the early days of March, an hour felt like a day felt like a week, and a week felt like a month. And I've told people we had 12 days in March and 49 days in April that finally got us to May 1st. And I'm sure many of you feeling the same way. This is a meeting rhythm worksheet, again, that you could lay out what a daily huddle looks like. And we also have a lot of additional meeting rhythm agendas we could share with you. Again, back to simple stuff. During this time in which that people weren't actively inside their businesses, with customers and vendors, we need to be reaching out. Many of you are going to have to learn the art before you have to learn the art of virtual selling and virtual interacting with your customers. And it's best done before you're setting up a video to have a conversation with them, when you need to ask for something in return. This is just a format you can follow called the Ford Principles. It comes from John DeJulius's book called The Relationship Economy, and going through just simple things. How is your family? How are you dealing with this? Tell me a little bit about your job. What do you do for fun? And then what is that pie in the sky dreams? And this is the kind of stuff, if you're using client relationship management or a CRM tool, you drop this information in there, and we're building relationships. And I will tell you, there are people are willing to pick up the phone now that I haven't talked to in years that are willing to take your call. And once we get back busy again, that's going to stop. Take advantage of building those relationships and continuing those relationships while you not necessarily asking for something in return. At petracoach.com, and I'll show you the link later, we've set up a COVID-19 resource center. Now, I will tell you that there are many places you can go today and get a COVID-19 resource center, and I'll point you to ours and let you go in. All the information is free to get your hands on and be able to go use. Also, we do webinars all the time when we're bringing experts together and we're bringing some of the industry leading speakers. Think about industry leading speakers these days cannot go out and stand on the stage any longer. Because we have a network of industry leading speakers, we're bringing those speakers to our community in a way to provide you information during this time. Stabilize. This is a spreadsheet here. And again, when I talked about a weekly flash report earlier, this is a spreadsheet where you can build out a framework for your profit and loss statements. And you should be modeling in what are those changes that you would make at certain set points. So if your business is not impacted, congratulations. We're seeing that about 60% of businesses have been not impacted or slightly impacted. 20% of the businesses have been impacted but not severe, and 20% of the businesses have been severely impacted. You need a plan, as I say, plan for the worst, live for the best, but you need, in my opinion, you need a high, medium, and low plan. Low meaning the worst case scenario, the bottom falls out of everything. These are the cuts I need to make in expenses, possibly reductions I need to make in headcount. Then build your mid plan, which is your most realistic. Then build your high plan, which is under these assumptions, this could happen. And then go work like hell to achieve that high plan. And again, I'm very much an optimist inside of what we're doing. We work with hundreds of companies and seeing that, I will tell you this, opportunities still exist, but they may not come as easy as they've come to us in the last 10 years. However, if you're willing to invest time and energy, you may have to work a little harder to achieve the same outcome. But I've seen very few situations where that it has become really kind of, we can't recover at all. So hang in there, build this model, make sure you have the decisions, be ready to know what those decisions are when the numbers hit certain levels before you're forced to make those decisions. This was just a letter for essential business. I know there were several quiet days I drove into the office as an essential business, having that letter in my pocket to make sure that if I got pulled over by the police that I could at least show that letter. It didn't happen. Reset. Do you want to start over? Let's hope the answer is no. And let's go into reset. Set a target. Some people go, I don't know. Should it be this? Should it be that? Just set a target and get started. And there's a book, Strategic Intuition. I don't know the name of the author, but it basically says the hypothesis of the theory holds true until otherwise proven untrue. Pick a target. It's right until it's proven wrong. Don't make decisions on behalf of the customers in a vacuum inside your virtual building. Go ask your customers what they want, what they need, what's in demand. And again, it's back to building those relationships, even in a virtual setting. Now could be the opportunity of a lifetime. And you know what? This is what entrepreneurs like to do. This is my poor attempt. And by the way, this was done a month or so ago. And this was my poor attempt about when we initially thought that maybe be a V-shaped, turn, and then we'd come back for the best. I'm just going to go on a limb and tell you I'm not an economist. I think we're going to see more like a W, but I don't know how deep any of those troughs are. And I don't want to be the person that's quoted saying Marshall said this. Prepare for the worst, expect and live for the best. So under reset, this comes down to 4Q conversations. Think forward is a format you could go by. 4Q conversations, reaching out, building those relationships, asking your customer, member, client, whatever you want to call them, how are you doing? What's going on in your industry? How are we doing? And how can we be most helpful right now? One of the questions I always ask of Joel or any of the other leaders that I work with, right before we get off the phone, I'll ask the question, did I help you today? And sometimes the answer is, well, maybe not so much, but most of the time it's yes, because the intentionality is making sure we're talking about the things that's helping you. That's what your customers want to know, that you care about them and that you want to help them, even sometimes when there's nothing expected in return. So in the reset, we're reporting information up and downstream through our huddles daily, customer service task force for those surprises, and we're closing the loop with a client, simply meaning client has a challenge. You may not have the answer. It's your responsibility to get the answer and do it when you said you're going to do it. We talked about pivots earlier today. What are those things we could possibly pivot to take advantage of, which would allow us to stay on track with where we're headed? Here's some examples of pivots, the hand sanitizer story, Uber Eats. There's so many different things that people have pivoted in during these times. Most of the time we knew going into this crisis, there were things in our business that we needed to change. But you know what? Sometimes it takes a little bit of pain before we're willing to change. The time is now. And while we're not hitting the hard reset, we need to take the time to make sure we're setting aside the time to disrupt ourselves on a frequent basis and disrupt our business on a frequent basis. I will tell you this, the business that I work in as a coach for businesses, prior to March 12th, we were probably a 90% in-person, 10% virtual business. In a matter of about 36 hours, we became a 100% virtual business, and we continue on as we did prior to just in a virtual offering. What I will tell you is we will never go back to a 90% in-person, 10% virtual. And it's not so much because we, quote, don't want to. We're going to have situations where we need to accommodate the needs and wants of the members we work with and serve them in the way they want to be served. And we can be so much more creative. And in some cases, be able to give more time to our members by not running in and out of airports and sitting on planes. Personally, I'm going to keep as much personal contact as I can and then augment or supplement it by the virtual contributions to those businesses. But we knew we needed to change, and so figure out how you need to change and talk about it often. Offense, the fun part. Do we stay at home and do nothing? No. What does it look like? What does the business look like coming out of the backside of this? What will you be offering? Who is your new customer? So when I mentioned earlier, core customer, real person, wants, needs, and fears, who sees value in what you sell to the market and willing to pay you what you charge because they see value. It is those people that we want to do more business with. We do business today with sometimes customers that aren't core customers. It's revenue, it keeps things in balance, but we need to find those people who see value in what we do and go build a list and go target more of those. Marketing's cheap, hiring is easy, going to get easier. We should be taking advantage of training during this time. Many of you have payroll protection program loans. In some cases, your businesses have not returned. You have the opportunity to write standard operating processes. You have the ability to train people. You have the ability to cross-train people. You have the ability to isolate people who are in positions that may be the holders of information that if something were to happen to them, real example, talking to a company 2 days ago, the payroll person is out of work, not because of COVID. She actually broke her hand, but they recognized that they couldn't get payroll done in a way it needed to be done. You have those people inside your business as well, and it's time to find those pockets of people who are single, holders of information and make sure that you don't get caught by a surprise with someone who either is out because of themselves or their family and cannot return to work. So finding money, who has the money? It's probably in places you've never looked. Who are those people? What are the buying persona, and how do you get in front of them? This goes back a bit to core customers. Create your dream top 25 list. Figure out how you're going to get in front of them. Use LinkedIn to connect. People call LinkedIn the old guy's tool. I'll tell you that still people in times of trouble and stress in business, they go back to LinkedIn. They figure out, do I know someone who knows someone? And then set up a Zoom video, build a relationship, and it's the opportunity to connect, not to sell. Easy little marketing story here. Some people grab the marketing lever and say, marketing is relevant when we have plenty of money, but let's get rid of marketing when things get a little tougher. But this is just a story many of you may have heard with Kellogg's and Post. Post cut back their expenses, and Kellogg's launched Snap, Crackle, and Pop in the last depression in the 30s. And really, if you go look 90 years later, Snap, Crackle, and Pop, Kellogg still beats Post in the market. And there's one decision right there that the desire to go grab and be myopic and grab that short-term lever ultimately ended up in a long-term play that didn't work out so well. Again, able to find talent. You should always be interviewing or accumulating resumes of people out there and looking for those opportunity hires. And if you have extra money that you can deploy into talent that you otherwise could not get when unemployment was whatever it was, 4 or 5%, then you need to make sure you're getting that talent and ultimately building back stronger. So training certifications, again, now's the time to take advantage of those downtimes. project you've dreamed of. Many of us, when I say extra time, my extra time has come between probably 10 p.m. and midnight, but there's still quiet time because we're grounded to the house more than ever, that we can still have time to think about those ideas of what we could go do and then ultimately turn that into what we should go do. And again, change is inevitable, growth is optional. Who are we? Again, petracoach.com. We're the largest coaching organization of its type, implementing the Rockefeller habits with coaches across the United States, up to and including Europe. We work with hundreds of companies, and we, again, don't tell them the things they want to hear. We tell them the things they need to hear. I'm the dude in the ball cap on the front, and I caught grief today by not having my ball cap on, but I wanted to make a good first impression with all of you. You can go to petracoach.com. You'll see the COVID-19 page, but also you can tour around and see plenty of resources that are available for you. You can see workshops and seminars we have coming up. I will tell you, we are in the business of coaching people. Yes, there's free information there, but it's not a bait and switch. We help companies get better. We help leadership teams return to working on the business and not in the business. Okay? And so set goals, do the work, have the plans. These workshops are not updated, but you can go to our site and see that. petracoach.com. You can email us at info@petracoach.com. We have Main Street lending seminars or webinars and workshops coming up. We have a Back on Track in Q3, which is basically resetting your annual plan for the back half of the year coming up. We're still doing adaptive planning or crisis planning workshops that are 30-day sprints. All of these in the mindset of getting you in the rhythm and habits of making sure you're assembling plans that help your business succeed. And then here's the Petra Vault, which we can get you access to if you reach out to us with information in there that can help you in your business. And I'll finish here by saying, like anything else in life, if it's important, you'll find you'll find a way. And if it's not, you'll find an excuse. And Joel, with that being said, I'll turn it over. If anyone has any questions at this time, I would love to answer some questions and be able to help those on the webinar today.
I do have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
First off, in the D.S.R.O process, where do you find people struggle the most?
Let me make sure my screen here. Can you see me okay, Joel?
I can.
Okay.
I can see you up close and personal all of a sudden.
Up close and personal. Where do people struggle? I think it's easy to go into defense mode and play defense. We need to get people to offense. You've got to clear the head trash and get your brain to open up. Many of you were brilliant going into this. You're going to be brilliant coming out of this, but you can't live in fear and thinking the worst. Whatever you focus on will be whatever the reality becomes. You focus on the worst, you'll live in the worst. You focus on the best outcome, you'll work towards the best outcome.
And if someone's unsure of how to start and just take that first step, I mean, what's the one or two things you think that they should sink their teeth into immediately to get rolling?
Well, again, no matter how formal or informal your plan is, you've got to have a plan. And many of you are going to have to clear your heads for the back half of the year. I say that we went the first 2.5 months, everything was fine. From March 12th until, really, we still got a lot of questions to get answered, but from March 12th to May 1st was a blur. By the time we round the turn for the back half of the year, by July 1, you better have your collective act together, and you better have a plan, and you better be intentional and fighting like hell for most of the time people are fighting for their people, Joel. We can say they're fighting for the business, but most people love their people and they want to get this right for their people. By the time it gets to be July 1, you better have your act together and have a plan.
I got one question actually for me.
Okay.
So, you've got the benefits in your business of getting the details of a lot of different organizations. And recently in conversations that I've had, you've talked about the 60-20-20 ratio. Can you explain what that means?
Well, I'm a heavily, even though, worked at the C level, my brain runs in analytics. So everything that when I'm talking to someone, I'm always processing and putting things in a simplified bucket. What I'm saying is 6 out of 10 businesses on average, this is not a report. This is not something I saw on social media. This is just personal experiences. I feel like 6 of 10 businesses have been lightly affected, if at all, from this. 20% have been impacted, and they just need to clear their head really quick and go fight like crazy to get their business back headed where it needs to be. And then 20% could possibly be in a business serving airlines or hospitality or something like that, and it is decimated. I will give an example. I can't go too deep into it, but I'll just say in one specific industry with a member that I work with, their business has been really hit hard. But what we're talking about is, instead of that business doing well over $100 million at a single-digit EBITDA, it may make sense coming out of this to be half the size and twice the EBITDA. And so that's possibly what may happen. It's going to require some hard decisions, but in fact, it may end up driving more happiness, because bigger is not always better.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So, like I said, when we were kicking off, I cannot thank Petra Coach and Marshall specifically enough in how they've helped us through this current time. I take advantage of all the extra webinars and activities and small forum groups that they have offered their members. I have nothing to sell here other than to try to help people that are listening today and encourage them to reach out to Marshall, reach out to Petra Coach, or reach out to us, and we'll be happy to hook you up. Marshall, thank you for your time today, and look forward to hearing from you. You have one more thing you want to say?
I do, because okay. I appreciate your humility, Joel, and I feel like that I want to say something. As a former software executive and a guy who ran several professional services businesses that delivered technology to customers, I'll say this in lieu of you saying it. These are the times to be looking at how to use technology and software and automation to make sure your business is doing what it needs to do. These are also the times in which you may have the opportunity to go focus on some of those automation and technology things that you would or should have gone and done already. And there's no better time than now. And I know that as you work with your clients, with your offerings and NetSuite and other things that your talented team does, I always say to you, and you know this, all I need to do is deliver value above and beyond what that you pay me for what I do, and we've got a great relationship. And that is a challenge I know that you're taking to the people you work with as well. If you can set and show them that what they would compensate you, that you can deliver above and beyond, that should develop a strong relationship and help those businesses be successful. So it wasn't a scripted plug, but from the heart, saying that sometimes we have to get out of our own way and use automation and technology when it's not always easy. Go find someone else that can make it easy.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And thanks again. And everybody, have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Joel.